My father said, I'm worried about what kind of Muslim you're going to be. He said, when they come for you, I need to know what kind of Muslim you're going to be. He said, you're going to stand up and be a Muslim, you're going to be a nigger. He said, because if you're going to be a nigga, leave the religion. He said, it can't help you if that's the way it's going to. And I thought about that. I still think about that, man. Allah be pleased with him. I'm like, that's a devastating conversation. And my father was a Muslim. He's talking about the power, positioning, and uprightness. When they come for you, what are you going to do? Which one are you going to be? I'm standing there, and I'm about to go up, and elderly, I know she's Pakistani Indian lady, like waving. I'm like, oh my gosh, hey, I got an elder, alhamdulillah. And she's like, come on over. I'm like, oh, maybe she's gonna give me a blessing. I walk over? I'm like, hey, how you doing? I get a salam. She just has her cup like this, and like, she said, get me tea.
Your heart must have dropped.
And I'm like, I'm on fire, man. I'm on lit. And I'm not in a good space. But I think about what Imam Muhammad said. And he said, sometimes you got to serve people, whether you like it or not. He said, Islam doesn't mean that you could give it to them when you need to. You can't pick and choose. I'm a strategist. I feel like you can weigh on my ideas.
Okay.
Look at the title. Allah Made Me Funny. Allah Made Me Funny was this. Even if you don't like Allah Made Me Funny, you still got to say Allah's name.
So in the newspapers and everything.
It's in the newspapers. Come on, bro.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the MuslimCentric podcast, and thank you once again for joining us. My guest today is one of those trailblazers that we can learn so much from. If you're over the age of 30 and a Muslim in the West, then the name of Preacher Moss will bring a smile to your face. I was fortunate to have helped organise his first tour to the UK in 2004 called the Eid Extravaganza, so it was lovely to sit down and reconnect with him nearly 20 years later. Preacher Moss was born Bryant Reginald Moss in Washington DC in the 1960s. He was raised in a Christian family, and due to his funny impressions of his church pastor, he was affectionately called Preacher Moss. Comedy was in his bones from an early age, and he started studying his craft and refining it in comedy clubs in his teens. In his 20s, he moved to LA to become a writer, and was a writer for Damon Wayans and George Lopez. He had his own stand-up show called End of Racism, and he toured hundreds of campuses. The events of 9/11 in 2001 changed everything, and he went on to become the founder of Allah Made Me Funny, which was a comedy tour, and he travelled across the whole of the world since 2003. His colleagues included Azhar Usman, Azeem Muhammad and Amer, who have gone on to many mainstream projects. Many people will not be aware that Preacher Moss has a degree in journalism and was a teacher for children with special needs. In this interview, I was struck by how thoughtful and strategic he has been with everything he does. He has clearly made decisions regarding his comedy career which others may consider as missed opportunities, but it is obvious that being true to his faith has always been at the forefront of what he does. I learned a lot from his experiences of being a black Muslim within the Muslim community in the West. We know there can be racism even amongst Muslims, but I was really affected by the story he tells when he is waiting to perform at a show. It's an issue that we should all take seriously and remedy, as there is no place for racism in Islam. I'm sure you'll love the gems he has chosen to take to the desert island. Shout out also to his interview with Brother Ali, which is worth listening to, and I'll post a link in the show notes. Preaches on all the social media channels, and he has broadcast over 800 episodes of his own shout out shows. If you're watching on YouTube, excuse the slight mess as we filmed in Preach's hotel room before he performed in Glasgow. He was so gracious with his time despite feeling tired, and I really appreciate the time he took out to spend with me. Just a reminder, if you're enjoying this podcast, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and leave a comment on Apple Podcasts, as it helps other people find our content. Inshallah, this will benefit us and others that come to our channel. I've also started a newsletter which you can sign up to via the website, where I give some behind-the-scenes context to the interviews. So until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So Assalamu alaikum, Brother Preacher Moss. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, brother. I appreciate it.
So we're in your hotel room in Glasgow, and this is October 2023, and you're come up for a comedy tour across the UK.
Yes, sir. We're rocking out with the Penny Appeal Super Muslim Comedy Tour. Okay. So that's the second year in a row.
And how's it been going so far?
Alhamdulillah, man. The audience has been generous and welcoming. It's just good to see Muslims at this point in time in history, if you will, coming out, understanding that you do have to separate tragedy and trauma, and you have to self-love. So seeing people come out and they need smiles.
Yeah,
they need smiles and just reassurances that not through comedy, just reassurances that we still have community.
Yeah,
that can contribute. So that's extremely important.
Yeah. And I was just reflecting earlier when we were setting up that you've been to the UK many, many times.
Yes, sir.
And I think as far back as when maybe we first met initially was definitely in 2004.
Absolutely. I remember my first trip to Scotland.
So about 19 years, and mashallah, you're still going.
Yeah, I'm hanging in there.
Fantastic. So really privileged to have you on this podcast episode. There's so many questions that I want to ask you, so thank you so much. So I'd love to hear firstly a bit about the start, so Preacher Moss from the beginning. So can you tell us a little bit in terms of what do you think would be relevant for people to know about your kind of early childhood that kind of made you the person that you are now?
I think my early childhood is the baseline is really just very, very inquisitive. I had a lot of questions framed around existence in America, a lot of questions about racial identity, a lot of questions about religious identity. And they, talking at a pretty young age, man. You're asking these questions 7, 8 years old. If Christianity exists, then why do I see that? If God is just, and these are his people, why do I keep seeing these things? And, at a very young age, man, just extremely empathetic with the condition of people suffering, people who are dealing with oppression, and seeing the aspects of it. Even if you're middle class or whatever, you saw aspects of drugs, you saw aspects of hopelessness, and those are things that mattered. And you're always in a space like, how can I take what I have, skill-wise or talent-wise, and make a difference?
Yeah. And what was that kind of household like? Because you were born in D.C., weren't you?
Yes, Washington, D.C.
And you were raised a Christian.
Yes.
And I was reading that both your parents were very kind of active within the Black Civil Rights movement.
Yeah, my mom, if you watch March on Washington, they have a documentary called Eyes on the Prize. You can see my mom and my aunt in the documentary. My father was sort of like a Black Panther type of guy. I never joined because they never really came to D.C., but he was really about equity for people. And, we can talk about how you express it. But my dad was the guy. It's like, you're not going to disrespect me.
Yeah.
As a man. You're not going to disrespect me as a man of color. Yeah. And extremely fervent about that. When I think about it, literally, he defended a lot of people. And I think about it, it's like, you think all black people, like, he defended a lot of white people too, who were in a space, and it was like, it just wasn't right. And I can respect that.
Yeah.
I have a much deeper appreciation for my father now that I'm older than what I had before. It was a deep appreciation then, but it's like, there's a whole nother layer to that, and until you're in that space, you don't really understand what that layer is.
And is it true that your mother met Martin Luther King?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. My mother's from Danville, Virginia. She met him in the early marches.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so was that kind of very present for you growing up, the idea of civil rights, that justice for black people as a young boy?
I was in the integration years. So you had forced integration, you had busing, So you were going to schools where the white kids didn't want you, and the white teachers didn't really particularly care for you.
Can you paint a picture of what that? Because a lot of young people that might be listening, people that are not brought up in America, what was it
you had
like?
segregated schools. You had segregated schools. And then even when the law changed, you had schools that were predominantly black, and they weren't. They didn't have access to good resources, so the education was imbalanced. And so the idea is, well, we'll just send these kids to white schools. And so you had the cultural baggage for a lot of young black kids that I'm still trying to figure out what it is to be black. I'm trying to figure out to be a kid, and now you're taking on all this racial baggage to a school, and there you are. And I can tell you what my early years were. Elementary school, I think I damn near fought every day.
Really?
I think, yeah.
With white kids?
Absolutely.
Because what, they would call you names, or
they didn't see us as people. You get off a bus, they walk to school. Get off a bus, and we were the first black family in the neighborhood. We were the first dark-skinned black family.
Right.
So you weren't mixed with anything. And the light-skinned kids, we call them light, bright, damn near white. They could pass. I couldn't pass. And with my father being who he was, and it's like, dude, I got horror stories just from correcting teachers.
Right.
Correcting teachers, and teachers, you're wrong. I'm like, no, these are the facts. But, you're young and you're black, and it's like, you don't matter.
But do you think that affected you? Or were you kind of somebody who just fought against that, or were you somebody that was quite hurt by that?
No. It fired you up. I talk about this school, but there was a teacher, my 6th grade teacher. My 5th grade teacher was amazing, Miss Prather. But my 6th grade teacher was the OG teacher. African American woman. Her name was Miss Elvita Jones, and she was from the old colored teachers college. And in that mantra, they were like, we're framing minds for the future. We need these kids to be successful, so they could pave the future for us. And I would still give thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for her, because she framed that thinking. That fury, that rage, and it's like, yo, there's something in here called intelligence, and you're gonna harness it, or I'm gonna beat you down. And she fashioned us in 6th grade. She fashioned me particularly to be a critical thinker.
And they were talking the 1970s.
You talk, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She fashioned me to be a critical thinker, and that pretty much belies everything I've been doing moving forward. Everything from Allah Made Me Funny is not people. It was a comedy to it. No, it was a strategic response to Islamophobia.
Yeah,
and it was a curriculum. I was a school teacher. People forget that.
Yeah,
and it's like, how do you deal with people who don't think? You have to reteach them how to learn. And that was Muslims and non-Muslims. Some of us, even now, I love our community, but sometimes we get in our own way. We're still hawking Islamophobia. I'm like, they're not busting through our windows. They're not coming up in our houses. It's not that. Don't hyper visualize this thing. So if you know that the boogeyman is not the boogeyman that has been out there, then you have a duty. You have a duty, responsibility to go up. You know what? I could be aggressively aware and aggressively present for what I believe. Yeah. And that's when you start teaching the kids, you know what? Somebody says, get out of here. You ain't got to vacate the premise. What if I don't? Yeah. What if I stay? Hey, what if I bring 3-4 more people? And then it becomes this whole different dichotomy and relationship. And that's what it was. And learning to fight back then. Learning to fight. And it wasn't just learning to fight. It was like, we're all in the same boat. So lunchtime was strategy time. I'm going to fight so-and-so. You're going to fight so-and-so, because that's where we were as kids. Forget education.
Yeah.
It was about existence.
And I guess do you think things are much better all these decades later? We'd obviously know
we're lazy
in recent years.
Well, no, we're lazy. We're lazy. We are extremely lazy.
We're lazy.
Social media, internet, da-da-da. We're looking at everybody else's lives on their phones and we're not thinkers, man. We're not turning out critical thinkers. We now have something called AI. AI helps you not think. I'm like, this is great. It helps you not think. So literally, I go through the process now. I have to unplug, man. Don't call me. You get back to write a letter to somebody.
Yeah.
You got to get back to writing a letter. Can you write a letter to somebody?
Yeah.
Put a stamp on it and send it out. And here's a test that AI doesn't work. AI can't visit the elderly.
Yeah.
Like, the elderly don't understand AI. AI doesn't understand the elderly. It can't take that information because they haven't been putting that information into a wellspring of computers and data and stuff like that. The elderly say, hey, man, if you know, you know. If you don't know, you don't know. And I'm like, thank God we have the elderly.
So people are getting left behind, I guess.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Do you think the situation for black people has improved over these decades? So you're talking about the 70s, and then, fast forward to we had a black president, and, then we have Black Lives Matter with George Floyd.
Yeah.
And these, are we still... What's your reflections of situation of black people in America?
You said black people, the condition of black people has only improved because it's improved the condition of other people.
What do you mean?
There's a saying that says, the tide lifts all the boats, and that is black awareness, black empathy, black education, black intellectualism, intellectual capacity. These are things that culturally that have been addressed. If you think about it, in 100 years, less than 100 years, after the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, right? You have a culture of Africans that leave the plantation. Some still have to stay on the plantation. They're illiterate. They're not well financed. Everything is anti-business against them. But in 100 years, they managed to produce schools, businesses, education, intellectual capacity that can actually argue against the laws that oppress them. Argue against the laws that oppress all the other people. You know what I mean? In 100 years. Nobody's done that in the United States. You look around the world, it's like nobody's really done that. So, it's not tooting the horn, but I'm like, they say invention is mother necessity. You're looking at a spiritual thing, and that's not even to get into the whole aspect of what the black church has done, inclusive of Islam, which has had a shorter time period in the United States in terms of gestation and what it's done since 1920.
Okay.
So you begin to look at that, and everybody wants to be with a winner. Yeah. Or I won't say a winner, but everyone wants to be with progress or things that. So you begin to see what that is. So the African American has, in many regards, you're the canary in the coal mine.
Yep.
It's just that canary keeps coming out, and everybody goes, "Wow, the canary keeps coming out. I can go in." And so that's kind of where we are now. Barack Obama being president. If you're old school, it's like, yeah, that's wonderful, but you're still a politician. You still got to deal with them old dudes up in that hill, old dudes up in that Senate, and you got to deal with a system that has predated you for years. That hasn't just kept black people down. It's kept white people down. It's kept poor people down. You're going to change that in 8 years. You're not going to change it in 8 years. Not that I'm a pessimist, but I'm a realist. And that is the thing we say I have to separate from the system, find out something that I can work on organically that can lift all of us up.
Okay. And just going back to that kind of those roots when you were growing up, and you've talked about your experiences. What about, obviously you're known as a comedian, but obviously clearly you're a thinker and you're somebody who's, has that ability for that critical thinking. Was there evidence of that when you were younger? Were you quite funny? Were you a critical thinker? Did you challenge the system?
I was a funny kid. I watched my father be funny, and his funny was different. His funny was funny, but his funny had rage to it. Like, I knew what my dad was going through. And he still managed to bring home the smiles. He didn't bring home the rage. I seen the rage, but he brought home the smiles. And he was like, I need you to understand that. And I've never really talked about this before. My father taught me you have to learn how to laugh. He said, because you're going to get in situations where people will kill you. People will kill you. People will physically harm you for your ideas. That you've got to be able to turn something that's right here and flip it around and twist it a little bit so that you're still going to get the idea out, but to that person over there, it misses them. You know, it misleads them, if you will. Yeah, but, you know, man, come on, bro. We evolved from the black codes, man. There's no rap music without the black codes. You know the black codes?
No, tell us about that.
Oh, they had the John Brown. They had the John Brown Rebellion. John Brown, a white guy, led a rebellion, killed a bunch of white folks, and it resulted in the separation of Virginia into West Virginia, Virginia. So they had a black code thing. The black codes were the slaves were not allowed to talk, but they weren't allowed to speak at the same time. Right. So they had to come up with chants and things like that to keep the overseers and the owners, you know, keep them calm. So they felt good. So you just couldn't talk. You'd be like, hey, I was down south and da-da-da, da-ba-da-ba-da, da-da-da. And that singing made the owners like, I was downtown last week. I got tired feet. And they think it was entertainment. Yeah. You know, and that becomes the codes. So now what was meant to be restrictive is now creative language for people. Yeah. Okay. And it evolved into the blues, it evolved into R&B, and it evolved into rap.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, it's fascinating, that whole history and that kind of evolution. I mean, do you think your comedy was also a bit of a self-defense and a defense mechanism? Did it get you out of tricky situations? Were you able to, because if you can use humor to diffuse something, sure, then I guess that becomes a really useful tool.
You could use it to diffuse things, but you could also use it to challenge things. My mentor, may Allah be pleased with him, Dick Gregory, stood in front of white America and said, this is what black people think of you. This is what the oppressed people think of you. And he sat and delivered. He didn't shuck and jive. He didn't sing. He didn't do that. He was 10 toes down and in a suit. You know, in a suit, bro. If you understand the history of black entertainers, for many years, black entertainers, they were like groups, they were like pairs, and they would talk to each other, and the white audience they couldn't talk directly to a white audience, is what I'm saying. So they would talk to the other white audience would watch, and that was the fun part. And, you know, it'd be demeaning. He had blackface and things like that. But Dick Gregory comes, he's not blackface. He's telling them the truth. Everything about Vietnam to smoking, to the government, to corruption. And, you know, he's 10 toes down, man. And that's the guy. Like, that's the guy before Pryor. Yeah. That's the guy before Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby wanted to be Dick Gregory. Yeah. You know, that's the guy, you know, and he was original OG, man. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what, he passed away recently, didn't he? And
a couple of years ago, yeah.
A lot of people paid tribute to him because he was so significant.
I did. I went to his funeral. I went to his homecoming because I owed him. Yeah. I owed him. There's no Allah Made Me Funny without Dick Gregory.
Okay. And we'll come on to some of that.
Yes, sir.
So this is called the Desert Island Gems.
Yes.
Show, and so I want you to imagine we're going to cast you away to a desert island.
Okay.
And we'll maybe come back to some of these gems that you'll take with you.
It feels like Long Island, but go ahead.
So,
I'm sorry, bro.
So for your first,
yes, sir.
What's your first gem that you would take that is significant to you, that has been an important part of your life? What was the first gem you would take?
I got a bunch of them, not in any particular order. I love this one from Arthur Schopenhauer. It says, talent is the ability to hit the target other people can't hit. But genius is the ability to hit the target that people can't see.
And explain that or elaborate why that's so meaningful for you.
I think the idea, like I'm a huge disciple of deliberate practice, and that you can practice for situations, scenarios, but sometimes you're gonna go out on a limb, and it's away from what everybody else sees. And sometimes I would talk to people about things I was seeing, but it was 2-3 years in the future. Like, all that made me funny was 2-3 years in the future in 2001. I'm like, I'm thinking of this, but then, and you're talking to it like you're seeing it right then, but people are like, what are you talking about? Can't you see right there? And it's like, and that's the separation. And people can't see it till it happens. So in 2003, it happens. Like, yo, what is this all about? But I've been talking about it for 2 years. I've had counsel on it for 2 years. I've had the counsel and good guidance of Imam Muhammad, may Allah be pleased with him, several brothers from the nation. I went and did my historical backup. How did you guys handle it in the 50s and the 60s? What did you do? How did you build coalitions? I'm trying to build it with comedy. You guys build it with religion. And they were like, you're still building it with religion, but it's a different thing. It's a different art form. And I never forget, Imam Muhammad told me, he said, you're never going to be a master comedian. You're never going to be funny enough, he says, because your job is to be a master teacher. So the comedy becomes the tool.
That's right.
And that is being able to hit the target nobody else could see. Because I couldn't see it. Because he told me, this is a great idea. Allah made me funny. He said, but don't start it in the black neighborhood. Don't start it in the black Muslim community. Start it in the immigrant Muslim community. He said, because they don't see us. They don't understand our language. They don't understand our history. We have a divide. He said, go. Now imagine if somebody's telling you this 20-some years ago. Right? 20-some years ago, somebody's telling you this. And the idea was, hitting a target nobody else could see. But he said, because the future's the kids. The future is the kids. The future is me and you in a room in Glasgow. Me and you, and I'm from D.C. You're from Glasgow. 20 years, you're talking about 20 years ago when you first met me. 20 years ago, we're having this conversation. I'm like, that's the target that people can't see.
Yeah.
That is why, this ding isn't going to go anyplace. That's why people can't squash us out. They can't see it. And I'm talking about, it seems like really in the metaphysical and ephemeral. No, this is real.
Yeah.
This is 100% real.
And so let's talk about, because I was really keen to hear about Allah being me funny.
Yes.
And I think it's important we put it into context a wee bit. So I think it launches in about 2003, doesn't it?
Yeah,
and
it's a solo thing in 2003.
Is it? And so obviously 9/11 happens, 2001.
Right.
And then, this comedy tour, Allah Made Me Funny, and then it evolved to you and
let's fill in the blanks. 9/11 happens. Let's be honest. The African American Muslim community was on the sidelines. We did not know if we really wanted to get into this space with our immigrant brothers and sisters because they weren't coming for us. And two things that happened. There was a lot of reticence because African American Muslims, African Americans have been suffering, and we watched a lot of our immigrant brothers and sisters on the sideline. Like we used to say, y'all want to be white. Well, here's your chance to be black in America right here, right now. And the question is like, well, we're okay. We're safe. It would have been easier for us to go, there's us and then there's them. You want them. But the Imam put in my face, Maqasid al-Sharia, the purposes of Sharia. And he said, if it's applicable to us, it's applicable to them. He said, even if you're not getting the relationship, even if he said, it's not about the relationship. If you believe what they believe and we believe, he said, then you have a duty. And that was a step up. And so the comedy at that point in time becomes religious work. That now, if I was a sharpshooter, I would show up with a gun. Or if I was a guy who had data intelligence, I'd show up with that. But I was a comedian. And I showed up with comedy and I showed up with education. I was an educator. Yeah. And that was the thing that makes... Because all it made me funny, I wish I had the notes. It's a curriculum. I wrote out a curriculum. Yeah, I don't know if you know, I used to be a special ed teacher. I taught severely emotionally disturbed kids. And part of that, you have to write out what's called an IEP, an individualized education program for each student on top of their regular education. There's no one more severely emotionally disturbed than Islamophobe. It's shooting fish in a barrel.
Yeah.
So the comedy becomes very aggressive. It becomes very protest. It becomes very 60s. It becomes, what are you going to do? We put it in your face. You're not going to have a chance to come up with a formula. Nobody wants to mess with a comedian when they got the microphone and you don't have a microphone. We just took it to another level whereby we visualize you don't have a microphone. So when you read about this tour in the newspaper, you don't have a microphone. Or you hear about it on the radio, you don't have a microphone. Or when you see it live, you don't have a microphone. And it's like we can take the power back. And the power is really the people coming out to see the show because we give them an opportunity to self-validate, to self-ratify, to self-communalize what it is they feel. And it's like you're not feeling awkward. You're not feeling, they're coming to get us. You're not feeling that.
And you said you planned it all out. I mean, what was the main objective or objectives you wanted to get out of this?
I'm a strategist. I feel like you can weigh on my ideas.
Okay.
Look at the title. Allah Made Me Funny. Allah Made Me Funny was this. Even if you don't like Allah Made Me Funny, you still got to say Allah's name.
So in the newspapers and everything.
It's in the newspapers. Come on, bro. I'm an old school journalist. I'm like, you gonna eat this? I don't like Allah Made Me Funny, but you just said Allah. It's cool. It's 6 Muslims that like Allah. It's 10 Muslims that like Allah that read this thing. Or you heard the interview, or you saw the podcast. I'm like, I've been doing this for a long time. I told you I was a fighter when I was young. I wasn't a big dude. I'm not gonna lie to I won every fight, but I strategized.
Because when I was doing a bit of research, obviously seeing you were in a lot of interviews, there's a lot of kind of mainstream news clips at that time.
Mm-hmm.
They're saying, Preacher Moss, founder of Allah Made Me Funny. So,
but
why was that? Take it the next step. Why was it important people were saying Allah even at that
Look,
level?
man, I'm old school, man. I always said the one thing the Muslim community could probably use is a good PR, good Jewish PR guy. And I found one. And I found one. I'm like, he's just about the money. Here's money, baby. Do what you do. And he went out and he got us great press. And listen, man, there was really no tour. 2003, I went a year talking about Allah Made Me Funny. We didn't have anybody on the tour. We didn't have a date. Azeem Muhammad was my first guy. And I went with Azeem, and I'm tell you why, because Azeem was from the Nation of Islam. And I was like, I got to have these brothers at my back. Azhar Usman came second because the Imam said, expand it. He said, so you can't just keep it over here. He said, we won't win. We'll win, but we won't win. He said, go over here. He said, and I remember talking to him about yo, man, if I got to go over here, it's like, I'm a comedian. I'm like, that's like starting over. And the old man looked me in the face. He goes, well, are you funny or not? You take that one to the chin. I'm like, Jesus, this guy. You talking about hitting a target you can't see? I'm like, this dude's killing me. But I'm like, I believe, because I talk about it myself. I was like, this guy, he's from the beginning. He's from the first. This is Elijah Muhammad's son. Somehow he's seen this thing, and I've got the blessing. I don't have a whole lot of conversations with him. I can tell you, if you took all of our conversations, it might equal 37 minutes.
Really? So were you a follower of that community, or was it just somebody you had conversations?
I grew up around the Nation of Islam, and I advocate. I love those brothers. Islam in America is not probably Islam in the world if you don't have these brothers living it. I always joke. I said, you need to learn how to act like the Nation of Islam brothers. I said, they've been scaring white folks in America for 100 years and never went to jail. But there's a reason. And it's a very serious reason. The whole idea of Islam in the African American community is it grows up under the most grotesque, the most oppressed situations. So you have no protection of law. You have no religious stuff. You're not seen as a person. But with this religion, people have reframed value. And it's really it's really a movement from the sisters. The sisters really built the Nation of Islam. But they are figuring out under all the aspects of white supremacy, male patriarchy, they're trying to figure out how do we build community. Listen, marriages between African Americans are really only legally recognized in the late 1800s. So you have to say, what was family before that? You know, through slavery, what was family before that? So, like I talked about the evolution and something happening quickly. And that's it. And the arts become something in the 1920s. You know, the Ahmadiyas come to Philadelphia and present Islam, but, you know, it kind of gets rejected. It's like, yo, we got racism going on here. Yeah. And it becomes the Lost Found Nation, Noble Drew Ali, Marcus Garvey, the Nation of Islam. It becomes that. You know, they say Islam is going to meet you where you are. Prime example. And then you start looking at how it affects, you know, and no knock. You know, you look at everything on TV right now with Palestine and Israel. There's an absence of black faces. There's an absence of black opinion. Because if you ask me, I'm going to give you a holistic picture of how this thing really, really looks. And we can go deeper into it, man. I mean, that's probably one of my gems. Talking about Palestine. People are like, what are you about? I'm like, I don't know if you're really ready to hear me give you the truth, the hock about Palestine. Because it might hurt your feelings. But I think it needs to be heard.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And we'll come on to that. So, tell us about your second gem.
My second gem is when I took my Shahada. Old guy took me to the side of the masjid, opened the door, and he goes, come here. And I'm like, okay, you know, because now it's like magic. You just took your Shahada, like everything is magic. And he takes me to the side of the door. He goes, let me help you out. You're a new Shahada. You just took it. Yeah, I'm a new convert. He says, look out in the parking lot. And I look out in the parking lot. And he goes, do you see any burning bushes? I'm like, sir? He goes, do you see any burning bushes? I go, no. He goes, and there won't be any. He goes, Islam is work.
That's your introduction.
He goes, that was my entry. He goes, Islam is work. I'm like, this old dude just totally ruined every flowery thing, but I needed it. Yeah. Islam is work. And he was like, you ain't going to put in the work. This is going to be a dead religion to you. So if your heart didn't change when you walk past somebody who's hungry, this religion ain't for you. And that really comes out of the whole communal base of like the Nation of Islam and the evolution. And, you know, those are the things. It's really, really funny, man. It's really, really funny when I think about it, because that, you know, for all the different factions, Sufism, da-da-da-da, I still remember that old man.
Yeah. Sticks with you.
No, he's no scholar. He's no...
Yeah.
You see any burning bushes? No, sir. And there won't be any. Islam is work. I'm like, what kind of wisdom are you? What kind of gin have you swallowed, bro? Because you're killing me in the game. But I remember, though.
Yeah.
That's over 30 years ago.
Yeah, gosh. So let's just rewind. I guess, you becoming a Muslim and taking the Shahada. So I think that was about 1988 when you're about 20.
A little later. Right around 88.
Yeah.
I had a period, we call it a journey.
Because again, you can correct me if I'm wrong. So I think you started, doing the comedy clubs when you're around 20, around that age, and then
I started when I was 17.
17, okay.
I was too young for the comedy clubs. That's how I wound up in the jazz clubs.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so what led to that conversion? What was the kind of the...
Well, I had always had exposure to the Nation of Islam. But in the jazz scene, a lot of people don't realize that Islam came to America through a lot of jazz musicians. Okay. African American jazz musicians. So I was around guys. You may have a guy that shot heroin over here, but you had another guy's like he did nothing. He called his wife. He drank. He drank juice. He fasted. What's that all about? Well, this is Islam, brother. What? And that grows on you. And then, it's juxtaposition right against the crack wars that started in like 1984, 1985 in D.C. So at 17 years old, you're seeing guys that are going off to prison, guys are being killed, and now you have this full rush on about what's life about. Like, normally you have a space of I'm going to plan my life out. I'm like, no, I could walk out of here and the situation be what it is, and I may not come home. And I had a lot of brothers who did that, one of which who was changed his life around, and he was murdered. And he was on his way. Like Islam had kind of turned him around, and we were like, well, how did you change? Why is that different? And I think it was, I needed that, but I had examples around me, always around me.
So your interaction with other Muslims in that scene, or
what the funny part was when I was
in
in college, we had international Muslims.
Okay.
So from other countries, and I'm like, you ain't like the Muslims I know back home. They were they were nice, they were docile, but I was used to the I need to talk to you, young brother. I needed that.
Yeah. So
let me tell you about the black man, young sir. I needed that.
So why not go towards the nation then? Why?
Now, this is a true story. I was supposed to go to the nation. I should have gone to the nation. I was set up to go to the nation. The brother I was dealing with was kind of like, yo, when he tells me, you need to go down to New Jersey Avenue. And I lack of history. I just go down to New Jersey Avenue. I'm thinking that's the
Where's this?
Muhammad in Washington D.C. I'm thinking that's Muhammad's Mosque number 4.
So this is a Nation of Islam, a black Muslim telling you,
yeah.
Okay.
But it turned out he'd been locked up for a while. He wasn't active. Okay. So I went to Muhammad's Mosque, what I thought was Muhammad's Mosque number 4, but it's now Masjid Muhammad.
Okay.
So I walk in and I'm thinking I'm gonna see bow ties and all of that on a Friday, and I don't see the bow ties. I'm thinking maybe it's casual Friday. Yo, man, and they were like, I'm here to learn about Islam, and then, I had the fire, but they like, they were like, you need to come on in, and I think I'm a hybrid because I still the fire, I have the fire. I have a Sunni Akida, but I have that NOI fire. And have never let it go. So I go to join the Nation of Islam, but I'm 13 years late at this mosque. They had switched over in 76. I showed up in like 1989.
So you thought you were going to a Nation of Islam
I thought I was going to be in a Nation of Islam.
Turned into a Sunni mosque.
Dude, I shaved all my facial hair. I'm trimming. I know I'm going to be a dude. I'm like, I'm going to look good when. And the funny part, I got into military school for 6 years, so I knew I looked good in uniform, I was going to have the WFM thing and the hat and
when
hat.
When did you realize?
I kind of realized when they were talking about Shahada, but it wasn't like, I'm not gonna send a letter to the ministry, to get your X.
Which X number you?
Yeah. I thought I was gonna, preacher X1, preacher X, and it doesn't. But then what happens is they introduce you to the Quran, and so the Quran gives you this very, very different type of alignment in terms of narrative, and it's like, okay, you're bigger than your color. You're bigger than your color, and you're bigger than your calling that you think you have. And that becomes what we say, that the target, hitting the target nobody else can see. That's Islam. That's what it does for people, because people can't see where this religion is going to take them. You can think as much as you want to, but you can't see it. And that is the whole idea of understanding that there's a creative power, that there's something that's bigger, that's directing you, and to hit that thing that people can't see, You have to have that connection.
And how long was that period from starting to take an interest in Islam to taking a shahada?
Wow, man.
Was that a long journey or was it quite quick?
You're talking about from 14 years old.
Right.
I'm about 14 years old. I read the autobiography of Malcolm X when I was young. My father had it. And it had always been the thing about how did you go from this guy to this guy? How do you go from here to there? No dope. You know, they put you in prison. You know, they strip you down. Prison is a prescription for failure. How do you not take the prescription for failure, come out and be productive? And like I said, you don't have the recourse of law. The Nation of Islam was not a nonprofit or charity. I grew up where if somebody was hungry, we didn't have fundraisers. You took them food. People passed away, you took them food because the weight of a funeral, you didn't want them to worry about eating. And if you had to take up a collection, you take up your hat, and this is what you did. And it wasn't talked about. This is just what it was, burying people and getting kids to go to school and, you know, things like that. We understood poverty, but poverty was a collective identity. So if somebody was poor, that person wasn't poor, we were poor.
And what was the reaction of your family when they found out that you were learning about Islam or you became a Muslim?
I could have done a better job about telling my mother and my father. But my father had been around Muslims. And I've been saying this recently with the whole thing with Palestine and Israel. And I remember the one conversation that we had about Islam, very short, very brief, very succinct. And he was like, so I was like, Pops, are you okay with me being Muslim? And he looks at me, he goes, I don't have a problem with you being Muslim. He goes, I'm going to tell you to your face. He goes, I'm worried, though. What you worried about? He said, I'm worried. He said, I see what Islam has done for guys in my generation. You know, Elijah Muhammad, Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, you know, folks like that. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Mr. Louis Farrakhan. My father said, I'm worried about what kind of Muslim you're going to be. He said, when they come for you, I need to know what kind of Muslim you're going to be. He said, you're going to stand up and be a Muslim, you're going to be a nigger. He said, because if you're going to be a nigger, leave the religion. He said, it can't help you if that's the way it's going to. And I thought about that. I still think about that, man. Allah be pleased with them. I'm like, that's a devastating conversation. And my father was a Muslim. He's talking about the power, positioning, and uprightness. When they come for you, what are you going to do? Which one are you going to be?
What's your values? What's your principles?
Which one are you going to be?
Yeah.
This is a larger conversation about Palestine and the United States and Israel. Because I got a really dope thing that people don't want to hear, but it's going to come out anyway. I said, because, you know, what you see is people attempting to do what my father said. They're attempting to make you into that person or make you somehow assume the identity of that person. As he said, you're going to be this, you're going to be that. He said, because if you're going to be that, I don't want nothing to do with you. Think about that. Your father's telling you, I don't want nothing to do with you. If you're going to be that kind of Muslim, forget it.
But it sounds like he was making sure you're doing things for the right reason.
My father was clear. You can take on Islam. He said, but you're taking on Islam in the United States. He said, when they come for you, they come to strip a black man down. Yeah. Whether they put you in prison, whether they kill you, they come to strip you down. I need to know, son, when they come for you, and they will come for you, and they have come for me numerous times, I need to know what you're going to be. Yeah.
It made you think. What about your mom? What was her?
My mother was, she was a little hurt. Christianity was her religion. She was Southern Baptist. But she began to understand that it was evolution. I said, well, it's for the good of all of us. I said, I got to reevaluate how I treat you as a mother. Because I'm reading things. I gotta make sure that you're okay. I can't go a week without talking to you. I need to reach out to grandma and the aunts and the matriarchs of the family and make sure that they're okay. And my mother's like, really? I said, yeah. And my treatment of my mother over the last 30-some plus years has reflected that. And, you know, she's the one like, did you pray? Are you fasting? Did you break your fast? Assalamu alaikum, mama. Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, baby. And it's that, you know, because she was the one who ironically creates this culture for me to be this evolving Muslim. Because I'm not worried about whether she likes it or not. She's like, you know, this religion is important. She is the flip side of what my dad said. So it's very, very important.
Balance, yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that I'm always mindful of is the experience of people within Islam when they become Muslims, and I think it's people don't like talking about it, but I guess I'm very mindful of kind of racism within Islam.
Sure,
like we're the first ones to say, you know, from everything the Prophet peace be upon him has taught us, and what Islam teaches about equality, and it's, you know, what differentiates us is piety. But we know the reality is very different. I mean, most of us in the UK have come from South Asia, so Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, etc.
Yes.
Most Muslims here are that kind of demographics, although it's changing over the last few years. In America, it's very different. The other thing is, obviously, you've married an Indian Muslim as well.
Yeah.
So, what do we need to know? What do I need to know as somebody who's a South Asian of the experience black Muslims have within Islamic communities?
That comes to our next gym. The next gym is sometimes you got to serve the tea. Sometimes you got to serve the tea.
What does that mean?
Well, early on, before Allah made me funny, when I was in the promoting stage, before we actually had a tour, actually had a show, I was with Azhar Usman in New Jersey. And I went to New Jersey to kind of, you know, they hired him, but I was going to do a guest set to kind of introduce myself to these people, listen to me, to these people, to my Muslim brothers and sisters I had nothing to do with, and they didn't have nothing to do with me. And I'm looking for any kind of just positive interaction, because I'm standing off in the corner, nobody's talking to me. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So I'm standing there, and I'm about to go up. And elderly, I don't know if she's Pakistani, Indian lady, like waving. I'm like, oh my gosh, hey, I got a elder, alhamdulillah. And she's like, come on over. I'm like, oh, maybe she's gonna give me a blessing. I walk over. I'm like, hey, how you doing? I get salam. She just has her cup like this, and like, she said, get me tea.
Your heart must have dropped.
And I'm like, I'm on fire, man. I'm on lit. And I'm not in a good space. But I think about what Imam Muhammad said. And he said, sometimes you got to serve people, whether you like it or not. He said, Islam doesn't mean that you could give it to them when you need to. You can't pick and choose. And I'm looking at this lady with her teeth, and she's wiggling at me. That's what got me pissed. Like, give me money. And I went, found the tea thing, poured her tea, and I got show. You know, they called me up, and I went up, and I did my show. And she was looking at me like, "What are you doing? You know, bring me more tea." I was like,
"Why is the waiter on the stage?"
Yeah, and I'm like, she still don't get it. I'm like, no, you only get tea once. Yeah, one per Negro. You only getting tea. But what if I go off at this early juncture of all of me? What if I cuss this lady out? What if I snap in front of all these people? Even if that's the mindset or what it is, somewhere, somehow, it's like the old man. Ain't gonna be no burning bushes. Islam is work. And sometimes you gotta serve the tea. Yeah.
And was that all? I guess was that also one of the strategic objectives of Allah Made Me Funny, is to get the black people, black Muslims.
We were fractured. You know, we keep talking about Islamophobia and stuff like that. 9/11. if the people who were really, really astute and enemies of the Islamic community, if they're really astute, they would have realized that the two biggest communities were fractured. So, I mean, funny is on the outside, yes, we're trying to deal with Muslim image, but in the end, on the infrastructure type of deals, like, we got to get our act together. Like, we're sitting ducks. It doesn't take a whole lot when we're just fractured. We're not standing together. You know, we're not connecting. You know, we're distant, we're fragmented. I'm like, and the issue is like time. It's like, it's going to become a time where this thing is going to be really, really, really clear. And if we don't have anything in the interstitial to say that we can get together, you know, we had separate conferences. You know, we have history of just separate conferences. We have history of, you know, they used to do the Labor Day conference in Chicago, and they gave it up to ISNA, Islamic Society of North America. They gave it up to ISNA, and ISNA was like, okay, thanks, bye. We've never really come back. Let's do it together. And I'm like, this is what that reticence is. So it's like, why should we help? Yeah. We know the way that this government works.
Yeah.
If you don't want to listen, you want to go through a learning curve unnecessarily, go have at it.
That must be incredibly painful and disheartening to be, if you're Muslim is black, I guess you're fighting the racism from the white people.
Yeah.
And then also fighting your Muslim brothers, who are probably from different backgrounds and subcontinent.
Yeah,
and
like
Arabs, etc.
I have brothers like, you're the convert, and I'm like, dude, first of all,
there's that hierarchy.
It's like, please get a guy to talk to me that's like, you're the convert. I'm like, please, dude, where's the English dude? You know, I'll take it from the English dude. You're a convert. I'm like, but here's the deal, and this is probably what hurts the most. For African Americans, Islam has to work. It has to work. We don't have a plan B. We can't go back to Pakistan or India, Bangladesh or whatever. It has to work. And the immediacy and the urgency of it having to work is the thing that's made it work. Like, it's in the community. It is, you know what? It's not 100%, but damn, it's effective. That problem on the corner, we're going to deal with that problem. If it's drugs on the corner, you could be Sunni and black, you could be NOI and black. Hey, what time you been at the corner? We've got a problem at the corner. And not looking at how it's established identity for our brothers and sisters who came in the 60s. This thing has been made easy for you in a lot of regards because the heavy lifting has been done. When you come in the 60s and the 70s, you have freedom of religion. You have protection of the law. We didn't have that. And yet, you've been able to produce this massive representation of work. You know, building hospitals. The first Islamic schools are, Sister Claire Muhammad schools. Why? Not because we're black, because the quality of education that we see these schools are not good. That is the Miss Jones I talked to you about the 6th grade. That is understanding, hey, man, just because they give it to you doesn't mean it's good.
And I think this we don't have time to.
I ran. Sorry.
No. I think that I was going to comment on the community of Imam Wayans Muhammad is. I've heard they said that was probably one of the biggest mass conversions to Orthodox Sunni Islam was his community, which is massive, and I think it's a fascinating piece of history, really, that we probably need to, certainly in the UK, we don't know enough about. So I think that's, I wonder then how that, going back to Allah made me funny, I guess, how did that kind of translate into how you set it up? Because you wanted to make it clean, in terms of profanity.
Well, I was a clean comedian before Allah made me funny. That's what I think people need to know.
Okay.
I was a clean comedian before Allah made me funny for years.
But to attract that audience, then it was, I mean, I've seen Muslims attend. They don't laugh at these events, so they go. Certainly not in the early days. Like we would host Nasheed, artists.
Yeah,
People
because
just sit there,
you stick
just
the
like,
comedian. I
was
remember
that
doing
hard?
the first show, 2004 in Bradford, and they did the sheet. They introduced me when I didn't know it was Bradistan or whatever. So I got no idea. I'm tired. They made us drive there straight off the plane. I mean, when these, this Islamic Society of Britain, shout out, but they're really cheap. Okay, so I show up. You're the comedian. You start realizing these people have never seen a black man with a microphone that wasn't a scholar or somehow attached to Islamic scholarship.
And the only ones were Imam Siraj Hajj
And Imam Zaid Shakir.
Yeah.
And there I am in front of these people, and I remember I'm looking at them, looking at me. Here's my first joke. I said, I'd like to do an impression of you looking at me. And then it happens. It's like, I'm going to talk to you, and I'm going to be really, really proficient and strategic and understanding that I understand your sensibilities. And in a way, I'm not asking you to be black, and you're not, and I'm damn sure not going to be Pakistani Indian. I said, but I'm going to deliver on these things because I had a game plan. Going back to, I say W. Muhammad. Let's go further. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad had a game plan. And then I'm standing there right there, and I'm like, this is the game plan. Don't fumble the ball. Get up and deliver. And once the laughter started going, and they were like, oh. It's like, okay, now we've established a new identity, a new relationship. And by the end of the tour, by the time we got to Glasgow, was the last show, 2004. By the end of the tour, because you didn't really have apps, you had internet, but you didn't have apps. You have social media, so if people are calling about the tour, so when I got to Glasgow, the greatest show that happens in Glasgow is not recorded, but it's people. I always say Glasgow. They got halal gangsters up here, right? By the time I was emceeing the show, I was supposed to be emceeing, but I'm get ready to go on in front of Irfan Mackey or whatever, and the whole people like, I can't do the Scottish accent, but they're like, breach. It was crazy, and everybody was like, yo, I was like, I think I did my job.
Yeah, brilliant.
It's like, I think I did my job.
Take us to your next gem.
Oh, that's an easy one, man. My grandfather. Never have an argument with a man that's smoking a cigarette while pumping his own gas.
Elaborate on that one.
Pick your battles, man. Pick your battles. He said some people are just predisposed to just argue. They're not innovators. They're not critical thinkers. Yeah, they need you to distract them from the fact that they're not innovators and critical thinkers. And think about it, man. Would you really argue with a guy who's smoking a cigarette, pumping gas? Some people will be like, brother, please, no. Hey, I'll be about 50 yards away. You keep on doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that is the art of discernment.
It's wisdom, isn't it?
It's discernment.
Yeah.
And you got to understand discernment. Yeah. Even in our Muslim community, I have people I love, but I've had to walk away because your ideas are not so much are they feasible, but they're not realistic in the context of what we need.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts because from those early days, in the early 2000s, 20 years, the presence of Muslim comedians has kind of flourished, particularly in the last few years, especially with YouTube, Netflix.
Sure.
Some of the people that are on your tours, are massive in terms of fame and popularity, and so you have these stand-up specials on Netflix.
Sure.
They're in Hollywood. They're script writing. They're all doing that. So you've got a whole range of comedians. You've got obviously people like Dave Chappelle right at the kind of the seniority.
Yeah, he's at the top of the food chain.
You got Amer, you got Hassan Minhaj, you've got Rami Yusuf, all of these kind of who are talking about their Muslim identity.
But are they?
And
how are they talking about
that's
Muslim
what I'm going to
identity?
come on to. So that, you know, they're identifying as Muslims and they're also in that space. So, I mean, so as somebody, I'm a doctor, I'm not a creative person.
I got you.
Is where are those kind of boundaries between your faith, profanity?
I think they're blurred.
Content.
I think they're
and also
blurred.
having that space as a
we were
creative
talking. We were talking today about a situation where I'm with a younger group of comedians, and you know this younger group of comedians is talking about the the girlfriends and what they do with their girlfriends, and we thought about moving in together and not telling the family. And I'm like, yeah, I'm dated, but we didn't do that. We didn't do that when I came up. You know what I mean? That's not a conversation that you had. Some of the stuff that you see on TV, I would have old guys chin checking me when I came to the masjid. You know, Jim, number 3 or 4? Whitney Houston had it. She was doing an interview, I think, with Barbara Walters. Barbara Walters says, ask her, Whitney, does success change you? She goes, no, fame changes you. Success doesn't change you, fame changes you. Why? Because you can always be successful and you can fail. You can't fail at fame. If you fail at fame, it's a whole different thing. It's a whole different type of dynamic and a sense of urgency. You know, what is fame? I've watched guys who used to be famous hang out with famous guys hoping to get famous again. You know, success is that old man, right? Islam is hard work. Yeah, you never start working, but but people make sacrifices. I won't say who, what, where, and when, but people make sacrifices because the fame is more so than the notoriety. The fame is more so than the respect. There are people who are famous. I don't respect them. We don't respect them.
But do you think when these, obviously we won't name individuals, etc., but
of course,
do you, if some people will accuse them of compromising on some of their values,
sure,
etc., do you think they're doing that knowingly to get to a certain position and influence, or do they?
Absolutely, bro. Listen, let me give you a story. People say, Preacher Miles, how come you're not, you don't have the Netflix special? I'm gonna give you facts. I'm gonna give you game. I had my shot years ago. I was writing on the George Lopez show. Daryl Hammond was on Saturday Night Live. Daryl Hammond loved me so much that he introduced me to his agent at Brillstein Gray. Brillstein Gray was huge. They produced The Sopranos, Gary Shandling. I literally go into a meeting. This is one of those meetings that changes your life. And the guy said, hey, I love everything you do. I love your stand-up, your writing, da-da-da. Giving him scripts. And he's like, yo, I can see you as a consulting producer on this particular show. It's $15,000 a week. And I'm like, yo, it's 4 weeks in a month, right? And we're going, and it's going well. And he goes, let me ask you a question. Yeah, he goes, you Muslim? I'm like, yeah. I got to throw out his name. His name is Jeff Chetty. And he goes, you're Muslim? I'm like, yeah. He goes, so, let me just hypothetical. If I needed you to, kind of bend the rules so we could make this money, would that be a problem? And me ideally thinking, I go, yeah, that's a problem. That is a problem. I said, because who says we got to bend the rules? Why can't we just be better in that situation? Why do we have to bend the rules? Why do I have to do this? And there's an interview with Dave Chappelle. He talks about putting on a dress. I'm dealing with the guy saying, if I need you to put on a dress, will you put on a dress? This is years before Dave. And I'm like, yo, that is a problem. I'm like, because this is my religion. This is what I believe. And he goes, He goes, thanks for coming. The meeting was over.
End of discussion.
End of discussion. End of discussion. It's over. I'm like, huh? I wasn't there long enough to get my parking validated, brother.
Yeah.
And you walk out and I'm go, that old man was right. There's no burning bushes, man. There's no burning bushes.
So the people that have achieved that fame, have they had to make, because as an outsider,
I'm gonna say
industry,
this. I'm gonna say Allah knows best.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna speak.
of course.
I know things. And you can have the best information about what happened. I've been front and center for a lot of this stuff that happened.
Yeah.
But in the end, Allah makes choices. Allah is the best planners. Maybe it's meant for me not to see. Maybe it's meant for me to see that, to go, you know what? We need to keep pushing this way. Maybe it's okay that when the show is over, they leave in a limousine and you got to book an Uber. Maybe that's okay. Because this thing is not over. Remember, talent is the ability to hit things that other people can't hit. Genius is the ability to hit things that people can't see. You know what, man? You can't see the hereafter. You can't see paradise. You can't see your deeds. Listen, bro, you can't see your deeds. And that's here in this life. You can't see your deeds. What is a deed? A good deed. Yeah. That it made somebody feel better. You can't even categorize it. I mean, that's how crazy it gets. And I'm like, when you start thinking like that, I'm like, well, maybe I need to see that. I know guys who made money back in the day and they're homeless, locked up, drugged out. I'm like, maybe I need to see. They lost their families. I'm a star, but you lost your family. Your kids don't talk to you. I mean, this is real talk. So, maybe you need to see that. Maybe Whitney Houston was right. Success doesn't change you. Fame changes. I've been extremely successful. All praises to Allah. But what happens when you do become famous? You start making exceptions. What happens? And, it bears out. It does bear out.
Do you think some people that have become famous have kind of started to avoid you or cut you off in the sense that they don't want to keep contact with somebody that is going, actually, I've gone a different way, I've not chosen? Because I think what people forget is, one is that you were one of the trailblazers for the Muslim
well, you know what? When you go to those,
and you're at that cusp, you're in,
but when
LA,
you go to these people, you can't say, "Oh, I was hanging out with him." You can't go to the people. Go, that's the dude. That's the dude we told 14 years ago, 15 years ago. We told him bye. You can't possibly hang out with that guy. And even in I want to say real talk. In America, white supremacy, we say the white man has been trying to figure out a way to get rid of black folk for years. He hasn't figured out that narrative yet. So why would you want to hang around the guy, the guy that's trying to give you everything, and he goes, you know him? You damn near got to say, no, I don't know him. Because he's going to be suspicious of you. If you hanging out with him, come, you might give me the same answer that he gave me several years ago. You can't get rid of these things. There's certain things Allah puts in place. You can't get rid of. Listen, let me tell you something.
As a human, then that must hurt though, in terms of how you cope with that.
The Imam told me, he said, hey man, he said, in the end, you're going to do everything you can for your people. He said, in the end, they ain't going to do nothing for you. And he said, get used to it. So
you don't expect anything of anyone.
He said, get used to it. Yeah. He said, hey, let me tell you something. In Islam, as a convert, you haven't had your heart broken as a Muslim in this religion till a Muslim breaks it. Yeah. And so that for, I was like, man, I understand. I seen the game. Sometimes they'll go, I'm not that guy. I'm this guy. I'm definitely not that guy. Yeah, but we were tight. We were family. And I'm like, okay. But what did we used to say? We were all successful together. But when it became an issue for fame, right? Pimps used to say, people act funny for the money and strange for the change. And that's what fame is. Act funny for the money and strange for the change.
But I guess you can sleep better at night and be content that you've held on to your values and done what you felt is the right thing.
And the cool part is,
the difference, because the fame and success.
Well, here's the cool part, man. It doesn't require you to be perfect. It requires you to be it requires you to be present. Okay? And as a man, from where I come from my culture, from what I seen, and the people who made sacrifices for me, yo, man, I owe people. I owe a Dick Gregory. I seen Dick Gregory lose it all. Yeah, I read his book, and I people don't know Dick Gregory. When he went all out in the civil rights movement for people, he stopped doing stand-up. He lost multi-million dollars worth of gigs and bookings to the point that he wouldn't do gigs, and Bill Cosby would do the gig and give him the money. He'd take the money. He was there. He had kids. He had a wife, but he believed. I'm like, and he told me these things. I'm like, yo, I haven't got to that point, but I've been to that point where phone's not ringing for gigs. Because people want a certain type of comedian, and we don't want the black guy. We want the Pakistani guy that can do the black stuff. It was weird, and it's like, okay, when they don't need you, they put you aside. Okay. Some of the tours are the same way, but, I believe, and like I said, I believe that the genius part. You lean to the genius part in the target, and that's the thing that's been special, alhamdulillah, because all that made me funny is hitting a target that people can't see. Yeah. And so we're still trying to hit that target. Yeah. Yeah.
No, thank you for your honesty as well, because I think it's an area that only when you've lived through it and you've dealt with it, and when you've been there from the beginning, I think that's where you develop that experience and that insights.
No, you're 100% right, man. Let me tell you something, bro. I love my Arab, Pakistani, Indian, Bangladeshi brothers, because they love Allah. And so my energy is a different kind of energy. I'm going to hug you like the nation brother. Nation brother, we may have a little bit more history, but I'm going to hug you. You know why? Because we can make new history. We can do different things. Yeah. And sometimes the energy, it can be too much. It can be too much. I've seen it before. Folks are not used to that energy. And sometimes it's cultural and whatever happened in colonization back in Pakistan and India, and that's real talk. But I'm looking at this religion as I live and breathe. I'm like, man, this is a liberating religion. And it's like, it's not to be played with. This is not a religion for punks. This is not a religion for the weak, man. And that's the way we carried it. That's the way it was presented to me. I would not be in Islam today if it was presented to me as something of a weak option. That it was not going to elevate me and challenge me. That the old guy that opened the door and said, ain't going to be no burning bushes. Somehow I go, that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sticks with you decades later.
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely.
And what's your next gem?
My next gem is... my big brother who actually helped me come to Islam. May Allah be pleased with him. He passed during COVID, during 2020. And I was working. I was trying to figure out what I want to do as a Muslim. And I took a job at a recreation center, Reston, Virginia, recreation center, Reston Community Center. And I was a young guy there, and I was struggling, trying to figure out programs. I got myself into a job. I got it, but I was in over my head. And he walked up. He's like, brother, if there's anything I could do for you. And he had that Muslim glow. Black man, if there's anything I could do for you, man, you call me. I'm your brother. Don't you be out here. You call me. And I called him. I had an event that required, like, footballs and basketballs and like volleyballs. And in the budget, the guy stole the money, said there was none of that, and I had a program that required that. And I called him up. I was like, hey, Brother Reggie, man, I got this program. I don't have any balls, any basketballs, footballs, da-da-da. And he's like, man, I got you. I'll drop it by tomorrow. Reggie comes over the next day trying to help me out. And he has this big bag, and he throws it down. He goes, there you go right there. And I look in the bag, and it's basketballs and footballs and everything I asked for. The only problem is they're all flat. And I'm like, big brother, these are all flat. And he looks at me, he goes, you asked, he said, you said you needed balls. You didn't say you needed air.
Fantastic.
Which is, when you ask for something, know what you're asking for. Know what you're asking for. Yeah.
Brilliant. So as we come towards the end of our interview, Preacher Wilson,
Yes,
and I've learned so much from just our conversation. So thank you for that. What do you think are some of the biggest sacrifices you've had to make in this journey to get to where you have been, to, you know, that grind and that struggle? What have you had to sacrifice over the years?
Rage. I had to sacrifice rage. I had to replace rage with love and hope, and model it after Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, a man I never saw.
Yeah.
You understand? I had to believe in that the target nobody could see. I can't see him.
Yeah.
I can read books about it and hadith and the sirah and all that, but I never met the man. And it becomes this leap of faith. Like my father said, be strong, but I could look at when he was strong. I can't do this. And it was like, that's when you know your religion is real, because I'm going to suspend all this reality around me, and I'm going to put all this currency into this guy I never saw before. He wasn't black. He wasn't nation. He's the first Muslim, bro. And I'm like, can you imagine the weight of being the first one of a religion? And when you start thinking about that, you're realizing that, man, your problems are small, minute, damn near irrelevant. That a blueprint is out there that you're never going to get close to. Your calling is never going to be that deep that you got to do that. That you have to, and watching like Muhammad Ali, you know, watching Muhammad Ali, he's the greatest. But even Muhammad Ali said, I'm not that great. And he used to talk about, I told people I was the greatest. He said, I wasn't the greatest. He said, I needed people to see the greatest in them. I had a great Muhammad Ali story. Maybe we can close on that.
Yeah.
I moved out to California to pursue my dream as a comedian. I got all kind of problems going out there. I totaled my truck. I'm getting out there, man. I'm in bad shape. I show up to a gig. I'm double booked. They're about to fire me. I'm like, In fact, the guy's name was Dave Coulier from Full House. And he's like, no, we're going to keep both comedians. He paid my salary. Shout out to Dave Coulier. And it's not going well. But I get a job teaching. I go back to teaching. And I'm going to do comedy when I'm not teaching. So teaching in the day, comedy at night. It's not going well. And I open up a paper. It's called the OC. It's called the Weekend paper, whatever. LA Weekly, that's what it was. And I saw that Muhammad Ali was coming, right? And he was doing a signing session. And I perk up like, oh, snap, it's Muhammad Ali. I snap out of this depression. Like, it's Muhammad Ali, yo. And I went to go see him. I get there early. There's a guy there with these paintings. And we're the first ones there. Like, I'm there like 2 hours early in line, you know. And we spark up a conversation. Ironically, he winds up being Muslim. He's like, I make these paintings. When the champ comes to town, I present them to the champ. And he's telling me everything about Muhammad Ali, about how long they've known each other, relationship, you know, health issues and all that. He's like, you might not come if you're not feeling well. I'm like, oh, snap. You know, we're talking, and then Muhammad Ali shows up. And it's like, wow, yo, you know. And he's like, all right, young fella, grab the end of that painting. I'm like, nah, you can handle it. He's like, no, stupid. He's giving me a lob. You know, it's like, yo, this is the alley-oop. I'm trying to hook you up. I'm so freaking stupid. I'm like, oh, yo, yeah. And I get there. And this is the power of Allah with Muhammad Ali, right? we've been waiting for a while, and I'm thinking, wait, is this healthy? He's held up people. You know why? He has kids around him, and he's doing magic tricks for the kids.
Wow.
He's doing a magic show for the kids. You got a line of people around the block in Ventura Valley. I'm to see him, and he's holding he's doing, look, the kids ain't paying no money for autographs. He's doing tricks like, and I'm like, is he doing tricks? You know what I'm saying? Is that the champ doing tricks? He's doing sleight of hand. The kids, all right. This guy's like, oh, Muhammad, hey, what's happening, baby? Assalamu alaikum. Black folk. Assalamu alaikum, baby. He's like, get over here. And they hug and everything. The guy gives me the assist. Yo, Muhammad, this is a young brother, man. He a teacher. He a comedian, man, And, and Muhammad Ali looks at me because I don't know how you're a teacher. You look like a kid. He's busting my hump. And I'm like, no. And, he's like, yeah, he a Muslim too. Muhammad, he Muslim. And he looks at me, he goes, you're a Muslim too. He's a Muslim too. It's like, oh, I got to give him the greeting. Snap. Like, assalamu alaikum. And just out of sheer being in his presence, I go, Muhammad Ali, you're the greatest. And he goes, I know. Then he looks at me, he goes, yeah. He says, give me $1. And I give him $1, right? And he takes the dollar and he rips it up and he makes it disappear. And I'm like, that's a wonderful trick. But I'm a school teacher. I need that $1. I'm broke. I'm in between checks, Mom. And he looks at me like, oh, you want your money back? I'm like, yeah. And he reaches behind my ear and he gives me a 50-cent piece. He goes, that's your $1 after taxes. Now, fast forward. I'll show you how it all connects. I'm at an event for Wayans Islamic Graduate School. And they're talking about getting a master's. I wound up getting a master's in Islamic education. That's not the deal, though. I wound up getting a master's in Islamic education. It never happens because I get the Muhammad Ali Leadership Award. So I'm not going to get this award. It's not looking good. Yeah. Muhammad Ali's wife, Lonnie, they're pitching me to her, and they're like, tell me about this young man, da-da-da-da-da-da. And they go, well, he's a comedian. And she goes, oh, Muhammad loved comedy so much. He loved comedians. He loved to laugh. I wind up getting the scholarship. Oh. So we're on a boat trip, and she comes out to meet the awardees for the scholarships. And I'm doing stand-up, and I tell her about that joke. I tell her about that Muhammad Ali thing, and she's just falling out laughing. And at the end, I go, Miss Ali? She goes, yes. I go, did you enjoy the story? She goes, yes. I said, I'm good. Cause I said, alhamdulillah. I said, listen, business aside, your husband still owes me 50 cents.
Not forgotten, is it?
Yeah. And she goes, I'll write you a check. I was like, all right. But my point is, look at the generosity of this man who in 1997 is doing magic tricks. In 2021, I'm getting a graduate degree in Islamic education. Still under the track of being an educator and a teacher, still doing comedy. Yeah, I mean, listen, man, that's the thing you can't see.
Yeah. And finally, if you were to meet the young preacher Moss, a 20-year-old, 18-year-old preacher Moss, what would you say to him if you were to bump into him now?
I think I would tell him this is my last gym. I said, young fella, whatever you go through, good, bad, and different, hard times, good times, struggle, suffering, life, death. The gym I tell everybody is this, and you've heard it before. Allah is God, keep it simple. That's it.
So, Preacher Moss, final questions. You're on this desert island, and you can take a book with you, apart from the Quran. Mm-hmm. What book would you take that would keep you company on this desert island?
I might take Message to the Black Man by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Music, I would take John Coltrane, Love Supreme.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
And you can take a luxury item on the desert island. That maybe is a little comfort or reminds you of home or something like that. What luxury item would you take?
Just a picture of my family, man. That's about it.
Brilliant. Jazakallah khair. So, Preacher Moss, thank you so much for your time. It's
Jazakallah
been a real
khairan.
honor,
Thank you so much
pleasure.
for having me, brother. I hope I did well on the podcast, and
It was amazing. So
hopefully
much.
some people get some information out of it. And like I said, if it's good, it's from Allah. If it's bad, it's from my own nafs. And I'll just try to do better.
Jazakallah khair. All the best, and may Allah continue to give you strength and the steadfastness to continue in the excellent work that you're doing, and continuing to open up, trailblaze and open up the opportunities for
Inshallah,
not just
man.
other.
And you keep doing what you're
entertainers in the
doing,
future.
Doc. You keep doing what you're doing. You make sure that this thing keeps going. I want you to have as many episodes of this as I have of the Shout Out Show.
Yeah, I noticed how many episodes are you shouting?
Well over 800, man.
800. Because during COVID, I saw you week on week.
You know what it is,
you
bro?
kept going.
It's what that old man say? It's work, man. Let me tell you something. We'll wrap here.
Yeah.
Islam for the African American totally realize the whole idea of work ethos, because you spent generations working for somebody else. Think about that. Through slavery, you wound up working through everybody else. Jim Crow, you work through everybody else. Segregation, you work through everybody else. Somebody gives you this religion and goes, listen, despite everything you heard, you can work for yourself. You can work for Allah. And that work for Allah is work for yourself. That's why you hear the tune from Elijah Muhammad said, you got to do for self. That's how deep that was. You got to do for self. That's in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s. Nobody even thought black people could think back then. But now you're telling, he said, where's that coming from? And the man says, Allah told me, you got to do for self. Man, that's a powerful thing.
On that message,
Yes,
Jazakallah
sir.
khair.
Yes, sir.
All the best, and keep us all in your du'as, inshallah.
Likewise, keep me in your du'as as well, my brother.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.